Welcome into another edition. Hi, everybody. It's the Lav Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode 120. Thank you for making us a part of your day on the audio side, Apple, Google, Spotify, or however you get your podcasts. And of course, on YouTube, the Lav Epstein Hitting Podcast page to watch the show. Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 37, Gold Edition, breaking down the swing today of Mike Piazza. We've got some other stuff to get into as well. So let me bring in professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, co-host, Jake Epstein. How are you there, son?
I'm doing well. Ready for this World Series to wrap up.
Aren't you? Yeah, it's getting, I don't know. We were just talking and joking before the mics went on about how it's getting a little bit tedious at this point. It feels like this season has been kind of just chugging along, and it's sort of, I don't know, it was going fast in the summer, but then September hit, and for whatever reason, it sort of has just come to a halt, and now it's just sort of, I don't know, going very, very slow and kind of at a snail's pace at this point.
Yeah, it's just been dragging on. There's just so many playoff games, and playoff
Yeah.
games are great. Don't get me wrong. Like I really enjoy it. I've enjoyed the World Series. I'm kind of bummed tonight. We have softball games at night for some reason for this tournament. You know, it's Colorado in November. It's not warm, and we're playing under the lights, and the World Series game's on. So I'm a little bummed I won't be able to watch. Possibly the last game tonight, but yeah, it's long. I don't know if we need to shorten the season with the extended games, the extended playoff rounds or what. But do we shorten spring training? I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know what it is, but you're right. It's definitely dragging a little bit here.
Right. And we're going to end up in the cold, and then we're going to be starting in the cold for a lot of teams come late March next year in
Yeah.
2023. Hey, this week on Cross Functionality, new episode on Wednesday, Cassie and I discussed performance evaluations and filling out those evaluations for your players. And of course, you do something very similar at the Lab BCS with hit tracks and blast motion reports. I got the email this week. How frequent would you say coaches should be doing those type of reports and evaluations for their players?
Yeah, usually 8 to 10 weeks is pretty good on that, depending on, the age of the player. I say once a player gets to about 13, 14, pardon me, it's a good idea to do that just to chart progress and make sure that you're moving in the right way. Plus, it gives the player a really good sense of accomplishment if they've been working hard. And you know what it's like in the weight room. You've been working hard, you're on an 8-week program, and then all of a sudden your max goes up, 20 pounds, and you feel really good about yourself. And it justifies the work that you put in. So, we try to do, the similar things as it pertains to baseball. I mean, ours includes motion, range of motion. It includes strength as well. We have a full-time, strength coach at the lab. So it encompasses everything, but it also encompasses, hitting metrics. Are we hitting the ball hard? Are we hitting the ball harder? Are we hitting the ball as consistent as we should be? Is our bat doing the right thing? Are we flipping our wrists? Is our vertical bat angle where it should be on certain pitches? Is our attack angle where it should be on certain pitches? So yeah, we try to do that about every 8 weeks with our players, and give them a nice report. Plus, it's great for the older kids, for the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, to pass on to the colleges that are looking at them, that have interest in them. And you're saying, look, this is how I'm progressing. Like these are real stats and real numbers. It's not just a video on a screen. So college coaches appreciate that too.
Yeah, and we also discussed in that episode how players can develop into coaching themselves. And we're seeing it in the World Series a little bit, a couple of times, with some offensive players helping out one another, being great teammates. Moreover, seeing those players help one another with their approaches and kind of coaching each other while the other coaches who coach them and taught them are taking a step back. Isn't that kind of the point, though, of coaching and teaching? You want to be able to groom your players to the point where they can be their own best coach and their own teachers.
100%. Every lesson I give, why are we doing this? When you did this and you were hitting, balls low to the pull side, what did I tell you to do? Okay. So what's going to happen in a game if the first at bat you do that same thing? I'm not going to be there. Can you make that adjustment on your own? Yes. And again, what is that adjustment? So I keep reiterating, what the fix is for all my players, so that they can teach themselves and help others. That's what team unity is all about. Why do you think? I mean, the Phillies are not. I mean, they're good. right? They're a good team. They're a gritty team, but there are other teams out there that have equal talent, maybe even better pitching, but they're not in the World Series. This team came together at the right time. They have relationships. They're pulling for one another. It's a total team concept. The Astros have that. I mean, look at the amount of balls where they got jammed, the Astros, and got hits
Mhm.
because they're trying to move runners. They're trying to sacrifice. There's a hit and run. I'm going to try to hit it through the opening. There's a shift on. I'm going to take an inside pitch and hit it through the 4 hole over there, the 3-4 hole. And they do it, and they keep innings going, and they keep rallies going. And that's what it takes to win in the postseason, because pitchers are really good, and you're not going to be able to just tee off all the time and hit 3 home runs a game. We saw it in one game, but we aren't really seeing that in other games. And it's the teams that are scrapping together and keeping innings going that end up winning. And that's it, and it's fun because now you have everybody in the lineup contributing. You have Maldonado, who's like a great catcher and got crazy hair, and he's contributing at the bottom of the lineup by trying to move runners or at and finding holes at the same time and not making outs. And it just keeps turning that lineup over. And I think that's why they've been so consistent all year.
Yeah.
They don't have the peaks and valleys that other teams have.
Right, right. I think what was it? The wins gap in the regular season is the largest since I think what '06 when the Cardinals won the World Series with 82 wins. I think
Yeah,
that's this year's scenario. But anyway,
yeah,
subscribe
crazy.
to Cross Functionality with Cassie Riley Boscia and I. New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcast, or you can watch the show, Softball Strength Academy. We did bring up some great points this week in our discussion, so please check that out. Again, new episodes every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah, speaking of the World Series, I want to get to a couple of points with that, and I think we'll do more of a dissection of the World Series next weekend when it's finally over. The World Series going as long as it has, by the way, I hate to belittle this point, but it's election day on Tuesday, so tomorrow when this episode comes out. The World Series will be finished. If it does go 7 games, I don't know. We're recording this on a Saturday.
Yeah,
If it does go 7 games, though,
2
the
days
world
before election day.
today, it would be the day before the election day. You'd be casting your ballot 48 hours after the World Series ended. It's getting a little ridiculous. Anyway, speaking of the World Series, John Smoltz does a great job, by the way. I think he gets a lot of flack for no reason whatsoever, just because people like to hate and dislike something. They find something and they just dislike it. But you can hear the passion he has for the game and his ability to dissect plays. And to me, it's pretty uncanny. But he talked about Alex Bregman's ability to split the plate. I think it was in game 5, the day after he had that big double off Alvarado
Mhm.
in game 4. Let's explain that a little bit further, what he means by Alex Bregman, his approach to be able to split the plate like he does.
You just look in or out. So it's all about anticipation. Everybody talks about, oh, you can't guess and you can't get. What's the difference between guessing and anticipation, right? It's
Nothing.
having a plan.
Oh,
Why give
okay.
yourself 2 strikes when you don't have 2 strikes? Meaning at 2 strikes, that's the only time you got to cover the whole plate.
Right.
So if you don't have 2 strikes, why don't you dissect that plate into thirds, into certain pitches, or halves, however you want to do it. So my dad, used to tell me, um, when he was with the A's, they would like to know which side of the plate. So if the runner on second was tipping pitches or picking signs, they weren't necessarily picking what pitch it was, fastball, slider, curveball, change. They were just giving location. So if the catcher would tap a certain sign, then the runner would take like a step back, maybe towards the base if it was that side of the plate, or they would extend their lead, to the other side depending on pitch location. And so he said that was more beneficial because on pitches middle away, he could let the ball travel more, or pitches middle in, he knew he had to be a little quicker on. So obviously things have changed since then, and we don't really tap side to side. Every location in the strike zone has a number, so they're going with that, and they're sequencing, and now we have radios and whatever it may be. Catchers are a little bit, they move really late. But knowing that is, my dad also used to preach that when you're younger, just look fast or slow. Either look, when you're 14 or younger, look for a fastball, look for a curveball. Don't worry about in and out. But as you get older, you get into college, you get into pro ball, that's when you can start looking, different sides of the plate because people have really good control. Or my daughter, in softball, she's a left-handed hitter, and she's the only left-handed hitter on her team. And there's probably 6 left-handers in the league, or the tournaments that we play in. And most pitchers are right-handed, and they typically, when softball pitchers throw, they throw to that right side of the plate, looking for the pitcher's mound. So she gets pitched outside all the time. So we just have to learn. We take it away. We look away. We take it away from. We make sure we keep our front shoulder down. If they do make a mistake, it's typically right down the middle. They don't
Right.
really make a mistake in. So you have to know your situation, know what kind of hitter you are, know what pitchers are doing with you, and then you can have that sort of approach where I'm going to look middle in here or I'm going to look middle away. You
Mhm.
can't cover both. That was a big thing that Ted Williams told my dad is you can't cover both sides of the plate effectively on the same pitch. Okay.
Right.
So what's effectively, less than, with less than 2 strikes, right? You don't want to put yourself in that 2-strike scenario. Now, you can cover both sides of the plate, but you might hit it off the end, you might get jammed, you might be early, you might be late, which is your 2-strike approach. So again, don't put yourself in a 2-strike scenario with less than 2 strikes.
Yeah. And John Smoltz also talked about Nick Castellanos as well on the flip side of things. And there's no secret that he's had a rough postseason, a couple of nice swings in there sprinkled in. But
Yeah.
John Smoltz
He's too steep.
predicts,
He's
well,
steep. Yeah.
and so he predicted that. I was just going to ask you what you thought of Castellanos this postseason. So I mean, he predicted he's going to have a big year in Philly next year. And we did a mechanical breakdown of Castellanos last offseason. So
We
check
did.
that out. Check that out on the YouTube side, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. What are you? Well, you already said it. What are you seeing? What are you seeing with
He
Castellanos?
looks like he plays for the New York Yankees is what he looks like. I mean, that's
No kidding.
exactly the swing plate he has. Where I'm not saying the Yankees were like that all year. It's just they got exposed in the playoffs. But that's what he looks like. He's dropping his barrel and he's swinging up too much, and so
Mhm.
he's minimizing his good contact zone. If he's a little bit late, he fouls it off. If he's a little bit early, he tops it because his slope is too steep. He's probably okay on curveballs, like a 12-6 curveball,
Well, he's hitting
but
low pitches though. That's where most of his hits have come
and
on
that's
really
those are
low
the only
pitches.
pitches he'll be able to get to. So we'll
Right.
be usually breaking pitches that are down,
Right.
or breaking pitches below. We'll say below the thighs. He's going to be okay on, but you just get, it's kind of the or Houston had a big day off somebody with less velocity.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one game they really matched, or mashed, he was 92 with fastballs and he was throwing 70 whatever percent, 80% breaking balls. And so you have more time to see breaking balls. They were sitting on breaking balls. If he was tipping his pitches, I don't know, possibly. But regardless of what it is, it makes it easier when you're 80% of one pitch, and that one pitch isn't 98 miles an hour. Okay, so remember, with velocity, you can get away with a lot more if you're throwing above 95.
Yeah.
You can get away with missing location, but you can't when you don't throw that hard. So as far as Castellanos is concerned, if he can get more to a Schwarber routine, which is more of a Kevin Long preached swing plane,
Right.
then he's going to go back to, he's just off of probably 5 degrees, which is actually a lot, but he's probably 5 degrees steeper than he was last year, or than when we did that video analysis of him. He's definitely steeper than that. And I don't remember when we did that analysis, but he was likely in a Reds uniform.
Well, we did last December, maybe
So it was in the
January.
off season. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's definitely, and he had, he struggled. He's such a good hitter and he's such like a fierce competitor, but it's frustrating, when you're good
Yeah.
and you're struggling and you're off and you can't fix it. And maybe he's trying to fix it in the cage, and he probably is. He's a sharp guy. Their staff's pretty sharp. It may just not be showing up. He's having a hard time bringing it. So he's going to need that, hey, here's the off season, wipe the slate clean, and we start fresh.
Well, he's not going anywhere. He's owed a lot of
Nope.
money. He's got 3 years left on a big contract, so he's going to have to figure something out.
Luckily, he's playing some defense. Who'd have
He's
known?
playing great defense.
I know.
Yeah. Looks good out there. And he's going to have to play a lot of good defense next year because I'm assuming that Bryce Harper is going to be out for a couple of months when he has elbow surgery.
Yeah.
So he's going to be playing defense even more than 2 months, probably into midsummer. On the flip side, I have to ask you something. I might put you on the spot, so I apologize. You can yell at me later. The Houston Astros, okay, they have a dominant pitching staff. There was a graphic that Fox showed about their international-born pitchers and their signing bonuses for Amber Valdez, Christian Javier, Jose Urquidy was in there. It begs the question now. I thought of this the other day. Do you splurge and spend all of your international resources on one prospect with a high ceiling a la Juan Soto, or do you spread that money out as the Astros did with their pitchers to try to maximize the value of that year's international market?
Yeah, I think you have to. Well, I think every year is different
Mm-hmm.
that comes through. So you definitely have to evaluate that. It worked out pretty well for the Nationals when they got Soto, and it worked out pretty well for you know the Astros. I
Yeah.
will say, getting international pitchers,
Yeah.
I like that idea because they have less wear and tear on their arms.
Yeah. Good point.
They really do. They got a lot less wear and tear. It doesn't mean they're not going to have surgery, but they just got less. They have less tear, and you don't have to pay them as much. Like, it's very obvious when there's a position player coming out of an international territory, Dominican or Venezuela or wherever you're looking. It's very well known. Okay, this guy moves really well. He hits really well, and he's head and shoulders above the rest. And that person is going to get a ton of money. Okay.
Right.
Then you have, the majority of players that are, where is their ceiling? Where are they going to fill out? Are they going to put on weight? Where are they going to put on weight? Are they going to get faster? Are they going to be able to hit for more power? Does their swing plane play for, making solid contact? Okay. With pitchers, it's like, okay, here's a big bodied person that throws hard. Well, there's a lot of those guys, and they're 15 years old. So the ceiling you really don't know. So the pitchers typically don't get the same amount of money that freakish position player will out of there, because you don't know. It's such a development standpoint, getting a 15-year-old pitcher and signing them. It's different that you're in the U.S., right? And you draft Kumar Rocker or Jack Leiter. Okay, well, they're 20 years old, 21 years old. We've seen them pitch. I mean, these people are 5 and 6 years younger than that, so they're not going to command that same amount of money. You can load up on them, and then you hope your development and your scouting was worthwhile. So I didn't answer your question at all.
Oh, you did.
But I gave you some good information.
You gave us scenarios. I don't think there's really one answer necessarily to it.
I don't
think it
think
depends on the pitcher's age, depends on the player's age. I like a position player to be a little bit older and coming out of college when they're getting drafted. And I think the same thing applies to international prospects as well. But a lot of times those international prospects who are 18, 19, 20 years old don't make it because they're signed at 16. So they don't make it to that age without being signed first.
Yeah.
But that's where you find the diamond in the rough. Guy who wasn't at 16 completely developed, and now you have a chance at 18, 19, 20 years old to actually sign that player who was now is under the radar, who wasn't really being looked at much at 16. So
Yeah.
And that's just from a position standpoint. Pitchers, I think, are the same thing when it comes to the international side of things.
Well, think about it here in the U.S. You're looking at 16 years old, you have a stud that's on the circuit, the perfect game circuit or whatever it is, and those studs that, if they were an international player, would make, whatever, $1.5 million or something, $1 million or more. They're going to sign to go play college at age 16, or they're going to give a verbal commitment to go play college at LSU, where they can get paid, or A&M, or where they're going to go. They're going to go where they get their NIL or their NIL money. So, but does that player at 16 that ends up being a shortstop at Vanderbilt or a shortstop at LSU, does that mean they're going to be an everyday big leaguer? Was Dansby Swanson at age 16, if he was in an international country, would they have given him $2 million to be the dude? I don't know. Probably not.
I don't think so. He wasn't drafted the first time around, was he?
Yeah. So it's very, and Vanderbilt takes, you say you're going to Vanderbilt. Well, you're probably going to go to Vanderbilt, but it's just a riskier move at age 16. It really is. But they pan out. I mean, they see him, and there's those freaks out there, and if you can get those freaks. Mike Piazza apparently wasn't one of those freaks.
No.
Segue initiated.
You're ready to move on, are you? Be sure to subscribe subscribe to the podcast, the Lav Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. I hope everybody enjoyed the World Series, though. We will break it down more, or at least give a final dissection of it next week. But I said the World Series was going to go 5 games, so I'm wrong. Sorry.
I got a chance to be right if Houston
You
wins
do.
tonight.
You do. And
although I want it to go 7 now so I can watch it on Sunday.
I hope it goes 7 now because I don't have to eat more. I'm eating crow today because I said it was going to go 5. So
yeah, that's good.
In the form of leftover Halloween candy.
Yeah.
I was at the store last weekend, by the way, and Baby Ruth, you know that Baby Ruth candy?
Yeah.
That was on sale. And
Peanuts healthy for you.
That candy is just about a piece of shit.
It looks like one.
It really stinks. And you know what else is really bad too? Sorry, I'm eating my crow. You know, I said I would. You know what else is a really bad candy though too? 100 grand. I'd rather eat fucking mud than 100 grand.
Yeah, it only shows itself.
It takes you 3 hours to eat because of the caramel.
You're working out your jaw.
Right, no kidding. Let's get into Mike Piazza. You've already segued into that. Thank you very much. Mechanical Breakdown.
Second rounder.
Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 37, 67th rounder, indeed. He had such a majestic swing. I said that.
Oh. I couldn't tell because you had crow in your mouth.
62nd. You know, it might as well have been just the 67th round. Right. Will not have been drafted at all, quite frankly. He had such a majestic swing, though. What swing attributes with Mike Piazza really stuck out to you?
You know, I go back to he was a guy that I grew up watching. You know, I was in my formative years, you know, high school years, middle school years. And my premonition of him was he didn't use his legs at all. He was very upright and was a barrel thrower. Like he had great hands and great forearms. And that was kind of what I thought with, you know, I saw him stand there. He was very still. He didn't have much of a load. He just kind of stepped and had a little hand pump. And then it was like, if it was a high pitch, he just threw his hands at the high pitch. If it was a low pitch, he just threw his barrel at the low pitch. And that's what I still think that a little bit. He had a funny follow through, right, where he would stand straight up and his hips would stop and it looked kind of funny, like he was a golfer. But, you know, going through his video, which wasn't easy to find, right? There wasn't a ton of video back then, but we'll have
good work, baby.
We'll have some to look at. He totally used his legs. He wasn't a squatty guy. He didn't get low with his body. He got low with his hands. He was a very opposite of what I would see with Castellanos right now. Castellanos hits a low pitch probably with a 40-something degree, 43, 44 degree vertical bat angle. Okay, where his barrel's dropping below his knob. Where Piazza, even on the low pitch, he would take his hands lower instead of higher, and he would still keep his vertical bat angle probably under 40 degrees, which is really tough to do on lower pitches. Bregman kind of does the same thing. He's a flatter vertical bat angle guy. So what blew me away was, I mean, he was some kind of talented. His eye-hand coordination was some kind of amazing because his mechanics were very, very good, but not off the chart great. You know, if you were looking to rank, it's why he was. I mean, why did he go in the 62nd round?
I was just going to ask you that. Isn't it weird? Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer. He looked funny.
Is that what it is? You think
he ran funny? He couldn't run at all, right? I mean, he really couldn't.
He was very awkward. He was very awkward.
Very awkward.
Well, I mean,
he wasn't a great thrower. He was probably the worst catcher in the league when he came up. Like he wasn't a good catcher, and he probably always hit. But it's not a smooth swing. You know, it's not a good-looking swing. You know, if you think about guys that he played with, I'm trying to think of, you know, really good players. I don't know. He was after Griffey a little bit, but you know, Griffey would have been, you know, during those times. And
Benny Agbayani.
Yep, that could have been one. But anyway, but he wasn't smooth. Nothing looked good. Nothing that.
Well, he wasn't a Chipper Jones, right? I mean,
he wasn't a Chipper Jones.
Chipper played in that era.
And so they see this guy, and that's old school scouting, right? Before metrics or how hard is this guy hitting the ball. Yeah, they see this guy. Well, he throws funny. He runs funny. He doesn't catch very well. Boy, he sure finds some barrels, right? That was the one thing. He was probably a, you know, whatever, a one skill recruit. You
Yeah.
know,
He had
a
one tool, his
one-tool
back to
guy.
ball skills.
He was a one tool, maybe two. He was two tools, right? Average in power, but that's what he did. And so they're like, well, we can't risk putting a non-athlete. Essentially, was probably their thought process on the field every day in the big leagues. And then he shoved it right up their ear, and became a Hall of Famer. I mean, you
No.
look at his stats.
Yeah.
Like, he was a over 300 hitter. He never struck out, I don't think, more. I'm looking at his stats now. Did he ever strike? No. He struck okay, so he struck out 93 times 1 year.
Yeah.
Other than that, he was always under 90.
What was his career high in home runs?
Was it 40? He hit 40 a couple times.
Can you imagine that though? I mean, he hit
He
40
hit
a couple,
40 home runs and hit
and
362
he struck out how many? What was
the
his
same
career high?
year.
What was his
40 home
strikeout?
runs, he struck, and he had 32 doubles. He struck out 69 times.
Wow. Can you imagine that?
I'm sorry, 77 times. He
But
walked
that's
69 strikeouts.
non-existent in today's game.
No,
It's amazing how great of a player he really was.
he was.
And he was
And
a good
a
catcher,
clutch
and he worked
player.
well with it. He worked well with his pitchers.
And there was no DH.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't get days where he could just hit, you know. He caught.
Yeah.
And he played in, 500 games most of his career.
Yeah,
Like,
he was
over 500 games. I'm sorry, he had 500 at bats. 500 bats.
What'd you make of his hitch with his hands? I was always fascinated by that.
It was
Looking
just
back
his
at
pump. That's what made me like he's a hands guy.
right.
Like, it's him feeling his hands, getting his hands going. So he was a hands guy. Even though he used his legs, he wasn't like, oh, I got to drive my legs. I got to load my legs. I got to get my legs in position. He felt hands. Even when you talk to him, I feel like I'm trying to, I got to find a barrel. If I have two strikes, I'm trying to put it in play. He was a down through the ball guy. That was his thought process. Whether or not he did it, he did not swing down through the ball, but that was his feel. That was his first move with his hands, which we'll see in some of the videos. So I think that's where the hand pump kind of came from. That's what got him going. Instead of maybe a rock or a sit or getting the weight into his back hip, he was a hand guy. When I get my hands going, I'm ready to go.
Right,
That's my load.
And we're going to see it on video today. But when you watched him hit in real time, you saw a guy who just looked kind of stiff. And the reason that the hands stuck out and his hand pump stuck out, in my opinion, was because he looked so stiff. He didn't have a big leg kick. It was a simple stride. It was almost like how Ted Williams used to stride, but it was more stiff.
Yeah.
But when you watch him on video, and we're going to see it today, you understand how smooth of a hitter he really was and how his body sequenced so well.
Yeah. No, it was cool to look at the video because, again, he was one of my favorite players growing up.
Me too.
I tried to hit like Mike Piazza. Like, I know Jose Canseco was my original. That's when I was younger. But Piazza, I remember in high school, I'm going to stand like this and just try to use my hands a little bit more. And I experimented with it. He was just great. And did I ever mention how he taught me how to, wrap my glove?
You mentioned that a couple of episodes ago. You want to tell that story?
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to see if you were listening a couple episodes ago.
I remember.
And he had the filthiest mustache ever for years.
He had a porn stash.
It was pretty disgusting and awesome.
Yeah, I know. I was never into that whole mustache look. Like the South
Is he a
Fasano.
Philly guy? Is he from?
He's from Norristown. His father still owns a car dealership.
Okay.
And I said this. Now I'm going to test you. See if you were listening a couple of episodes ago. Probably not. Did you know that Mike Piazza worked with Ted Williams, and Ted Williams predicted that he was going to be a great major league player? Did you know that?
You told me that. I only knew that because I remember you saying that. Yeah.
That is true, though. Yeah. Yes, they worked together.
Because of his uncle or his dad or what?
I think
Tommy Lasorda?
It was Lasorda. Lasorda got them hooked up.
Because that was his uncle, right?
Godfather,
something like that.
Yeah.
The Godfather.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Cool.
Pretty bad.
Well, that was pretty bad. But it was pretty cool that Piazza worked with Ted Williams. Because you see a lot of Ted Williams in Piazza. You may not agree with that. I kind of see the correlation, though.
Yeah.
You don't agree?
Maybe in the mustache or?
No. Ted Williams didn't have a mustache, did he?
Yeah, you're right. They looked exactly the same. We just said Piazza looked very stiff at the plate. And Ted Williams looked like a pretzel.
Did you guys win last night?
What did I win? What was I playing?
Softball.
No, we didn't play on Friday.
Did you this morning?
No, we played tonight.
Oh,
Tonight.
you're in your you're in your game mode here. I can
That's
tell.
right.
You're intense for today.
That's right.
Always good.
One of the girls, our catcher, hit a
Mm-hmm.
bomb over the fence, 12 years old.
Yeah.
But we only had one umpire, so they called it a double. It was
How
the
does
saddest thing ever. I was like, this
well? How
girl's
does
hit a
that
ball
happen?
over
But
the
it
fence.
went over the fence,
It went over the fence, but it was, like it was a big field, so they have like a 210-foot fence for softball.
right?
So the player's going back. It goes over her head, and then she hits the little fence that's pliable, and then she puts up her hand.
Like a chain linked fence.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
not hard, like a snow fence almost.
Right.
It's like a netting, like a
Had a lot
windscreen.
of give to it. Yeah.
Had a lot of give to it, and then anyway, it was
So
sad. Like,
you're mad
so she
about
only
that?
got double.
Well, so like you couldn't challenge it or anything?
Yeah,
Did you challenge like, hey,
yeah,
umpire, excuse me, that went over the fence, stupid. There's the ball.
yeah,
You should have pointed to
yeah,
the ball and said, look, it's over the fence. How did it get over
yeah.
the fence?
He said, "Oh, I think it bounced over the fence." I was like, "She was up against the wall. How could it bounce over the fence? There's not enough
Is this
room."
guy an idiot?
Well, that was my judgment, he said. I
That
said,
was my
"Okay, why don't we
judgment.
go ask the outfielder? She's 12 years old. She probably is very truthful. Let's ask her what happened."
And did they
And he
ask
wouldn't
her?
do it. He wouldn't do it.
Did you get ejected?
No,
Oh, I would have been ejected. I would have been
no,
furious.
no.
I would have taken the umpire. What was the umpire's name?
I don't know.
I would have taken Johnny umpire and I was like, come here, Chief. Let me show you the ball. Oh, that's over the fence. And now let's look for the mark on the indent in the dirt where the ball hit and if it bounced over. That would have been it.
Yeah, you've been run by then. And then it's, you get your kid on the team and your dad just got thrown out. It's not a good look.
Oh, I know. I don't care. I'm gonna do it.
I know. You're
a
East
parent,
Coast. All right,
I'm gonna
let's
do
get
it
to
one
Mike
day.
Piazza, shall we?
I'm just saying, like,
It's
that's
over.
ridiculous.
It's over. But pretty
The
cool.
ball went over the fence.
Ball went over
Okay.
the fence. Like, she's 12 years old. Like, give her the home run,
All right,
even if you're not sure.
we're gonna do I guess the second. We have two clips here. We're gonna do the second one though, because that one also has a side view of
Yeah.
Piazza's
So,
mechanical
Jim,
breakdown, volume
do you have the
37,
clip where it says Mike Piazza Hall of Fame
class of 2016. Yes.
Yeah. Is that the one you have? Okay. So
Yes.
we'll start there. Okay.
Bingo.
Rock and roll. Mike Piazza video breakdown for the Lab BCS podcast. So if we
the Lab
start
Epstein
here,
hitting podcast.
the Lab Epstein hitting.
Sorry,
because that's me, Epstein hitting.
Right.
So if you see here, you can really see how he pulls his hands up and back as he's striding forward. His hands really never come to a complete stop, but you can see where I'm stopping it here. Look at his front hip. Look how much his front hip opens, and look at where it says Piazza on the back of his jersey. So I'm drawing a couple arrows, one to his front hip, one to the Piazza, and then watch how much the hip moves compared to the torso. Okay, that's really, really, for a guy that never really thought about, probably driving his legs or getting into his legs. If you want to compare that to Ted Williams, Mr. Jim, then I think you're pretty much right on there. That's a very, very similar move. Okay. Then from here, I'm going to draw a posture line. When he starts to rotate, that just kind of goes right down, parallel to his upper body or his spine. Okay. And as he rotates to contact, you can see how his spine comes up a little bit, right? Probably because that pitch is high. Okay. Or the camera's moving. I guess the camera's moving. That's going to really mess us up. So, but you can see his posture does change. It shouldn't change in and out like that. So now his posture looks like this. It's more straight up. Okay. So we'll look for that on other swings. But that's something I see with young kids is they don't hold that posture, meaning their head lifts through the swing because their hips move towards the plate. Okay. So they kind of move towards the plate instead of staying in place. Kind of hard to see here with this because the camera is zooming out as we're hitting it. But what I love here is his lead arm where he's throwing. It's almost like he's throwing a Frisbee with his left arm. He's getting the knob way out in front to hit this ball to right field. And notice where he extends. We've talked about that in previous episodes. Do you want to have good opposite field power? Well, you can't rotate off the ball. You have to decelerate your hips How do you decelerate your hips? Well, your chest then has to decelerate. How do you decelerate your chest? Well, your arms have to accelerate a little bit earlier. So by him pulling the knob forward, which in my opinion is a crucial and very important move that people say you don't want to do, um, pulling your hands, getting the knob out in front. Notice how the knob is kind of pointing towards right center in this position. So, Jim, if you take the video to where the ball just shows up on the screen, okay, and his bat's essentially in the approach position, the lag
Yeah.
position, that knob
Yep.
is not facing the pitcher. It's like facing the second baseman. Okay. So what happens is now his chest is back. It's what Bregman does so well. He doesn't over rotate. His chest is back. Now, when he releases that barrel and extends, he's extending to the right center field gap where he hit this pitch. That's how we cover pitches middle away. Okay. We have to use our hands more on pitches middle away. On pitches middle in, you're not going to see that knob face the second baseman as much because he's got to rotate his body more. So it's got to face more to the pull side. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. The other thing that's very good here is, let's see how consistent his extension is. If we draw a line on the bat on this, his vertical bat angles, look at that. My goodness. Less than 20 degrees. Okay. A lot of times that's frowned upon. Sorry, Hall of Famer. You only hit 426 home runs. And then we look at, 2 frames later, and it's, still within, he's only like 4 degrees less than that. Okay. So he didn't flip his wrist and he didn't dump his barrel too much. Okay. Which is very good. Meaning the closer those lines match up, the better our extension is without flipping our wrists too much. Okay. So now we'll go to a side view and we'll see this is a different swing. This is a swing that he pulls. He gets tied up a little bit more. Okay. But if you watch his stride, let's see if I can get it. I mean, he just kind of steps forward. There's his hand pump. He just kind of pumps his hands up and then he throws them through. We get to his short approach position, right? Pretty good, meaning his elbow's inside his hands a little bit. His bat is next to his shoulder. He could be shorter to the ball. If you look at somebody like Vlad's probably there with the bat. Okay. But then he pulls his hands in a little bit more at the end. And if you look at his attack angle, how much he's swinging up, it's probably, there's a 12-degree line. Yeah, pretty close to that, 10 to 12 degrees. Okay. And he launches it. So even though he hit it 10 to 12 degrees, here's the blur of the ball. It's up here. Okay. He launched it at 32 degrees. Okay. So remember, if we were looking more at like Castellanos right now, instead of 12 degrees by his front foot, Castellanos, I'm going to clear these off just because we were talking about him today. Again, we're talking about it during the World Series. He's probably up here closer to 20 degrees. So if I draw that line, you can see how if he's just a little bit early and hits it here, he's going to top it, right? He's going to hit a pull side ground ball. If he hits it a little bit further back, he'll probably be good. But if he hits it, meaning his timing window is probably only about this big between those two circles, where Piazza's looking at a timing window of probably from there to there. Oh,
What's
no. Back here, it's like his back thigh he probably gets on plane, probably from there to there. Okay. So that's how you hit over 300. Okay. But again, that's a guy that, used to think about swinging down. Is he swinging down? No, he's still swinging up 12 degrees. So check out this pitch, which is, somewhat down. So now we're at the next one where he's got a black jersey on.
Yep.
Okay. You can see how far away from the plate he stood. My goodness. Can you edit that out, please? Okay. So we're gonna talk about how far. Good God.
Somebody's
I wanted to
sassy
say
today.
stands.
Yeah.
And then does he have high tops on? That's awesome too. Okay. But if we look, he's pretty far away from the plate. So he's going to have to get his hands out a little bit more. Okay. You can still see that knob where he really slides the knob out in front right there with his left arm. But this pitch, thigh high. So most of the time, thigh high, a good vertical bat number would be in the 30s, 32 to 35, 36. His is still in the 20s on that pitch. So remember when I talked about on lower pitches, he's still able to keep his vertical bat angle from dropping too much? That's pretty impressive. You have to have very strong hands and forearms to do that. But in doing so, If you can be in the 20s, you're going to consistently get more backspin than side spin. That's essentially what we're doing. If you have the bat like that, now if you have the bat, if your hands are up higher and then you drop the bat in like this at 35 degrees, then you'll tend to have a little bit more side spin and hook spin if we're a little bit early or a little bit late. But if you're closer to that 25 range where he is, if he's a little early or a little bit late, that side spin will be minimized. So again, he hits this ball. Look at his barrel after contact. So there's 25 degrees. We drew it. His next one, he's at 25 right after contact. That's how you hit through the ball. Good extension. You can see his power V is kind of low on this. I don't think we have a side angle, but notice where his extension point is here. It's like right back at the pitcher. He's not an over rotator. Okay. He had a little bit of a scissor move, didn't he? With his back foot.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Was he trying to do that? No, there was no scissoring back then. It's just he had a closed stance, right?
Yeah.
He stepped closed. Then he tried to get his back knee to his front knee, and in doing so, that foot will go that way. Okay. But typically, guys will only scissor on pitches that are far away from him. Well, he was off the plate here, so it happened. Even though he pulled it, he kind of came across his body a little bit more. So again, that move is not a bad move. You just have to be careful on if guys do it, it's great. If it's taught, we got to be careful. So look at this next one where he's in an all white uniform. This is older Piazza. Look how far away from the plate he is. I don't even know how he reaches this pitch. Right down the middle, and well, I guess not. It's outside. But look at point of contact. His hands aren't even near his body. Like he has reached so much to get to this pitch.
Yeah.
I mean, his hands are, look at the umpire. Talk about being exposed. Okay. Like his hands are here, way outside of his body. Like, this pitch is down. This pitch is right above the knees. Okay. Above the front knee. Let's go another vertical bat angle. This should be in the deep 30s. Usually with vertical bat angle, he's still at 23 degrees. I mean, you just have to have your arms that far away from your body. You have to be so strong with your hand. And if you look at him, he's not, he was big and strong, but not like guys today. Not built like guys today.
Yeah.
So he had such great hands. Kind of a throwback, definitely a throwback guy. So anyway, I think we've gone through all these look the same, but that was the one thing that I was very impressed with was the control he had with his vertical bat angle. Okay. There's one here towards the end. This pitch is at the bottom of the knees. Let's see what it is. So bottom of the knees, usually what I'll see with players is they'll be at 40 degrees, 40 something. He's at 36 at the bottom. So his range is from 18 to 36. Which is pretty darn impressive. Okay, so he was a guy that had great bat to ball skills. He was a hand dominant guy that he used his hands. He felt whether he used his body too, but he was a guy that thought about using his hands. If you hear his quotes, he wasn't like, "Oh, I'm trying to turn the barrel," or I'm trying to rotate fast, or that. He's like, "No, I'm just trying to kind of throw my hands at the ball and find a barrel," and that worked for him. It doesn't mean it works for everybody, but for him, it definitely does. So pretty cool look at one of the greatest hitters and the greatest offensive catcher in Major League history.
Well, great job by you. And again, to watch that breakdown, visit the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. By the way, I gone fucked up again. Excuse my language. I forgot to put Doug's question on the run sheet. I'm sorry, Doug. It's 2 weeks in a row. Doug, next week, I promise, we'll get to your question. And if anybody has any questions, email us jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Doug, I apologize. I will get to your question. We're not avoiding you. I forgot. Sorry.
You're no longer the best in the business, Jim.
No. I took a step down, and I need to earn my
way. Doug, feel free, Doug, to send Jim some hate email.
Oh, please don't. Then he goes in the spam folder.
No, it's Doug. It's Doug. We owe Doug. He has leeway now.
Okay. I was eating too much crow this week. That's the problem.
Too many Baby Ruths.
Ugh, yuck. All right. Well, with that, next week, Understanding the Pitcher Part 2, the official title. Hitters getting attacked with a fastball in and away. So kind of like we're talking splitting the plate somewhat next week.
Mhm.
We'll be discussing that. That'll be episode 121. What else you got coming up there? The Lab BCS. This is not the Lab BCS podcast. It's the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast.
Yes, it is.
Episode 120.
Well, as you alluded to, we have our assessment day coming up. So it's in a couple days. So you better get on, you better get on that quick. And then I'll be down there in for the college. I have all the college players coming in, baseball and softball players from around the country that I train. So we'll do our little deal there next month. And for the meantime, now it's nuts and bolts, right? Fall ball's over, so now we're focusing a little bit more on mechanics, swing plane, rhythm, making sure hitters, if they needed to make a change based on what they did over the summer and fall, we make that change now. Over the next 6 weeks or so. And then once January hits and we prepare for spring ball, then we'll start to get players game ready with, more velocity, more spin, things of that nature. So now it's developmental time, which is a fun time for me. We can talk to the kids. What do you need to work on the most? What is your main goal? Not what I think it should be, not what the whole group is, but what's your main goal? And that's kind of what we're going to start to process there.
All right. Well, great stuff this week. Episode 120. Thanks for joining us. You have anything else? Are you good to go?
Mike Piazza taught me in my catcher's mitt how to with a sanitary sock. I want all of you to go look up sanitary socks, since Jim didn't know what that means. That's it.
What is it now?
Sanitary, like clean.
I know clean. I know what that means, but what?
Sanitary sock, thin white socks you wear under stirrups, long and
like,
stretchy.
Is it like the wrestler McFoley when you have Mr. Sacco like that? You know what I'm talking about? And you put like that was his finishing move. You put the sock down people's throat.
It's not like that at all, but that was pretty awesome.
But you're talking about the sanitary sock. You don't wear it on your hand.
No, it goes on your foot. It's a sock. You put on your sanitary sock, then you put the stirrup over it.
What does that have to do with the catcher's mitt, though?
You use that sock to wrap around your catcher's mitt because it's long and stretchy.
Like McFoley used to wrap his sock around his hand, Mr. Sacco.
Yeah, just like McFoley. Yeah.
All right, we'll talk to you next week, everybody. Take care. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.